You're listening to Let's Stay Together Anime Break, our sub-series where we talk about the 2019 anime Fruits Basket. I'm Ellen.
And I'm Kayla.
And today we're talking about episode 7 of the anime. We're going to do spoiler-free summary, spoiler-free discussion, and then spoilery discussion, as we have been doing for every episode up to now.
One of these days we're going to mix it up. It's going to catch you guys off guard.
All spoilers up front.
Yeah.
So this episode combines 2 chapters from different parts of the manga. It combines chapters 10 and 12, which is not, I guess, not that different, but there's a part in between that's cut. And when you see that in the episodes, if you're only watching the anime, whatever, it totally makes logical sense because both of these chapters focus on Hatori, so it makes sense that they're combined together, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the original anime also combined this
Mm-hmm.
in the same way. In a different way. They combine the same chapters in a different way. So both of them kind of put these bits together, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want the details on these 2 chapters, you can listen to our podcast, episode 5, which is called Who You Are on the Inside and Outside, and chapter 6, which is When the Sun Rises, When the Snow Melts. And they're both really good episodes, I think, actually. Not to say so myself, but they're both really interesting, I think. So if you want some really, really detailed stuff, you listen to those. Send you that way. The episode opens with Kyo bursting into the room saying Tohru's gone again. But it turns out that Kyo just wasn't listening. Shigure and Yuki assure him, albeit sassily, that Tohru has gone out with her friends. We see Tohru arrive at a large and imposing gate labeled Sohma. She has come alone as Hatori instructed. Momiji pops up, which surprises her, and welcomes her inside. Beyond the gate, we see a long, tree-lined road. Momiji welcomes her to the Sohma house, and then he leads her to Hatori's house, passing by several traditional-style houses on the way there. Tohru thinks that it's quiet, almost like no one lives there, and the atmosphere is making her quite nervous. And by the time they arrive at Hatori, she's completely exhausted from nerves, and she's, like, panting. And Hatori's like, was the walk here that exhausting? And she's like, no, I'm fine. Hatori asks Momiji to go and get them drinks, and then we cut to the theme song. Do you want me to sing it for you? No.
Yes, in its entirety.
No. If you want to wait for 3 minutes while I find the lyrics. We cut inside. We cut to deeper inside Hatori's house. So she was just standing at the door, and when the theme song ends, we're in a room that looks kind of like an office. Like you can see that there's like cabinets with stuff, looks like books inside them or files inside them, and there's a desk. It looks like is there a computer, or am I remembering that wrong? I think there is, and there's a desk and there's a seating area, and it's very, very tidy, except for a photo of a woman that Tohru notices on the desk nearby, which is conspicuous, I guess. Hatori comes off as very stern, she thinks. It's surprising that he would have a photo on his desk. And then she suddenly worries that he called her here to scold her for one of her many, many shortcomings, which is always sad every time. Now, Momiji returns with drinks and asks if she needs Hatori to examine her, and if she assures him that she's fine. And then Momiji invites her to sit down. Now that they're seated, Hatori comes in to talk to them, and he's kind of like standing off to the side, so they're both sitting down, and he's standing up. Tohru takes a sip for a drink, and then she asks if he needed to take time off to meet with her today, and he says no, he only treats the family, and most of that means taking care of Akito. So, like, what I gather from this is that this room is actually his room where he sees patients. That's why there's a seating area, that's why there's, like, files, and why there's, like, a desk and stuff, which I think is interesting. It wasn't like that in the original, it wasn't like that in the manga, it wasn't really like that in the anime. Unless it's just implied that that's what's going on where they meet in the house before. But yeah, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I think the flashback later also makes it look like
it's the same place.
Like his house and his clinic are one and the same, which isn't really implied in the manga, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. It looks like in the manga when he has that flashback, it's a separate location, but we'll get there. Tohru asks, so Momiji says that most of the family are also busy today, so they won't be coming in for exams. They're making preparations for New Year's, and it's so busy that even the outside people are helping, not just the inside people. And Tohru was like, inside, outside? Momiji explains that they call the people who live, the inner main family are the people who live on the inside. We also see a huge shot of the houses within the Sohma complex from above. It's like this big sweeping shot, and you can see a bunch of different styled, kind of traditional style houses, different shapes. Momiji explains that there are about 100 people outside and 50 inside, and all 150 people are Sohmas. The only people who can live inside are the Zodiac or people who know about the secret. Shigure and Yuki used to live inside as well. Kyo, however, has always lived outside. And we see this pan kind of like across the rooftops of the compound as well. There's one comment I have about this episode that like all of these episodes have been really nice, but I thought visually this episode was really, really nice. Like there's a lot of stuff going on visually, and some of it I'm going to talk about, but just like I watched this and I really enjoyed it from just like a visual perspective the whole time. Anyway, this is just one of the things that's really nice. It's very detailed. Like all the buildings are really detailed. You can see all the like roof tiles and stuff drawn in, and all the layouts are really beautiful. So we see this pan across like kind of the rooftops of the compound as Momiji talks as well, and I think it's all of this like panning across the buildings kind of sets this like scale. It makes the family seem really big and imposing, which I don't think is really hit very hard in the manga, and it's also not kind of like that in the original anime either. So I think it gives the family like a different tone, which is nice.
Yeah, the manga's just got like Momiji's cute little map.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's some trees and a cat in the trash can or whatever, which is charming, but it's not like it's not adding to the vibe. And I feel like this is like adding on top of Toru's like nervous vibe about being there, which is nice. Hatori continues the conversation saying, to put that in another way, only a small number of people know about the secret, even amongst the family. It's outrageous that a complete stranger like Tohru would know about it. Ordinarily...
As a side note, in the dub, he starts that by saying, I don't know how skilled you are at math, but rude, Hatori.
Well, he could have said that to me based on our last episode, but probably just like filling some time. But he's really harsh. I do find that like I didn't watch the dub, but I watched the sub, and his voice acting is very harsh. You watch both? Yeah, that's good. I never make time to watch both. I'm terrible, but I feel like his voice in this sub is really intense, and I think that that's appropriate. Like I think he's because of what happens, but I think he's very stern. He's very, very stern. So yeah, if he's being a dick, like whatever.
It's just like rude.
Ordinarily, Hatori would have erased her memories right away, but Akito didn't order him to, and he even allowed Tohru to live with them. Do you have a fun life at Shigure's house? He asks. And yes, she answers excitedly. Of course, it's very fun. He turns back quickly, almost glaring. Like he like looks over his shoulder at her and says, I recommend that you move out. Very, very sternly. Tohru looks shocked. Momiji is kind of like hugging a pillow, and he looks down. Stay away from the Sohmas from now on. Our possessed family isn't fun and games like you think it is. We're monstrous, loathsome, cursed. He recommends that she leave before she regrets associating with the Sohmas. He warns her that Akito is trying to use her. But then he's interrupted by the doorbell and he excuses himself to answer it. So, after all this knowledge drop, he just, like, bails out.
Yeah.
While he's gone, Momiji starts to talk. So, like, Tohru doesn't say anything for a second. Like, she's kind of contemplating what he said. Momiji starts to talk. Hatori, he says, is almost blind in his left eye. He used to have a girlfriend named Kana. And the camera kind of zooms on the photo on Hatori's desk. So, obviously, it's meant to be Kana. They even got engaged, Momiji says. And he's now completely looking down, like, away from Tohru. So, like, slowly he kind of, like, moved his head. So he's now completely looking down. But Akito got angry, he says, super angry, and injured Hatori's eye. And we transition hard to glass shattering and blood spattering. And I think, like, a lot of people, I saw a couple comments on Twitter that people were like, I was really distracted by the screaming and the blood in this episode. It's like, and people, of course, who have, I mean, reading something that's, like, static is never going to be the same as watching something like this.
Yeah. The blood was very bloody, though. I didn't notice that. It is,
yeah.
Like, well, it was a bit more, like, kind of dark and stylized a bit in the first anime.
Yeah, and it was just, like, I don't know if people want to listen to us talk about blood, but it was just kind of like a spatter, and that was kind of it. Like, it wasn't really the same. This was, like, it's like sprayed, like it's really intense.
Yeah, and you see his like whole bloody hand, which I
don't think people were ready.
Shown.
Yeah. But of course, like I think I felt like mentally prepared because in the first episode they have that like little snippet where it's like my mom died in an accident or whatever, and there's like blood running into the gutter, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be this kind of anime from now on. I see. And I also think it's like stylistically appropriate. That's just my opinion. I think that Fruits Basket is a very serious manga, and I think that there is violence, and I think they're representing it in a way that I feel like fits in with the tone. But that's my personal opinion. Anyway, we continue. We transition hard to the glass shattering on the floor, blood spattering. And then we see Akito in the background kind of like swaying and staggering, which was also really uncanny, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Momiji's narration continues, super angry. Akito said they weren't allowed to get married and got violent and injured Hatori's eye. So all this time that Momiji is talking, so I'm going to jump between what he's saying and what's happening in the stuff that's overlaid, but we don't hear any sound from the images that we're seeing from like what happened to Hatori. It's just Momiji talking.
Mm-hmm.
In this kind of like flashback that we're seeing, Kana runs to Hatori, who's sitting on the ground, and Akito looks up and runs toward them. Shigure holds him back. Akito's eyes are wide, and you can see his mouth is moving like he's yelling angrily. And then we cut to Hatori, whose face is bleeding. Hatori never blamed Akito, Momiji says. Kana blamed herself instead. She said it was her fault that he got hurt. And then we cut to Hatori later, again back in this flashback. The visual that we see is Hatori, his face is bandaged. And we pan down to see that he and Kana are outside in the snow. Kana blamed herself so much that it turned into a mental illness. Hari ended up erasing Kana's memories. In the flashback, Hatori kneels down and rests his hand on Kana's head. We cut to a scene from the photo, which is in motion now. Kana is out in the sun smiling. Momiji says, so we see that Momiji's voice overlaid over this saying, Hatori couldn't stand to watch her fall apart anymore, so he erased her memories of the time that they were in love. And then this really nice transition, we see the photo, or like the scene kind of crops into where the photo is. Like it narrows into a little portrait-style rectangle. And then it fades out, which I thought was cool. I've never seen that in an anime before. I thought it was nice. We cut to another gray scene in the snow. Kana is walking away, leaving only footprints behind, and Hatori stands in the front of the scene. His face is just outside of the frame. He cried, Momiji says. But even then, he didn't blame Akito. Why not, Tohru asks. Because that's the curse, Momiji answers. Hatori doesn't want Tohru to get hurt like Kana did. Tohru falls to her knees and starts to cry. Momiji asks why, and then he apologizes. She says it's not that. Hatori is so kind, she says. Hatori returns and he slides the door open just slightly, but doesn't enter the room yet. Tohru says that she's glad that she met everyone, and she says, even if I have the life I do now because I'm being used for something, I want to thank you for it. We cut back to to Hatori in the doorway, and then back to Tohru, tears streaming down her face. Tohru says, the only thing I know I'll never regret is meeting Sohma-kun and the others. I am who I am thanks to them. And me, Momiji asks quietly. Are you glad you met me? Tohru smiles through tears and says, of course. And Momiji smiles back. The sound of a familiar voice reassures us that no one is using Tohru for anything. Of course, Shigure has arrived, and he says Hatori is just being dramatic. Tohru asks why he came to the house, and Shigure says that he has a sixth sense that told him. But Hatori teases him that he just wanted to come to see the New Year's prep. And of course they continue to bicker. And then Momiji says that they're old friends. Best friends, in fact.
BFFs, according to the subtitle.
Yeah, BFFs. They're Mabudachi. It's BFFs. We just talked about that in our regular episode.
Yes.
But we didn't talk about it here, but Mabudachi, so what he says in the Japanese is Mabudachi. I guess they might bring it back. I don't know if they're going to keep translating it as BFFs. Like, they continue to translate Hatori's name as Harry in the sub from Momiji.
You could call it the BFF trio.
Maybe. But what the word they say is Mabudachi is an old kind of slang word for best friends. Shigure says that he keeps trying to tell Hatori that Akito doesn't mean Tohru any harm, but Hatori never believes him, and now he's scared Tohru, and what if she moves out? And Tohru is like, it's okay. She thanks Hatori for worrying about her, but she plans to continue living at Shigure's. She bows, and Hatori then suddenly remembers, and he takes out the camera that he used to take a photo of Yuki and Kyo and puts it on her head to give it back. Tohru asks why he's giving the camera back, and Hatori is like, that was our deal. I told you that I would give the camera when you came, which of course she remembers calling him on the phone, and of course he didn't.
What's funny is like how that's originally said in the manga. I feel like he gave that as like an excuse for her having been there.
Yeah.
But in this one, it almost sounds like he didn't actually mean to threaten her on the phone. He just forgot to actually mention the camera. I don't know if that's what's intended, but
it definitely seems like that's the case for sure. So Hatori says that she still hasn't met Akito, or he's like, I'm sorry, you still haven't met Akito yet, and she says it's fine. And she also asks if Hatori is one of the Zodiac, and asks what year he is. Great question, Shigure says, but Hatori stops him from saying anything and threatens to call publishers and tell them every embarrassing thing Shigure has done since he was 4. And Shigure folds, of course. Hatori apologizes to Tohru. Apparently he does nothing but make people cry. We cut to outside. Shigure says that he wants to take a peek at the New Year's decorations, and Momiji says he has to rehearse his dance, and they explain that it's part of the New Year's tradition that the family has. So they leave Hatori to walk Tohru out. They walk through the sprawling grounds in silence for a bit, kind of just like awkward silence, and then Tohru asks Hatori about he and Shigure's BFF-ness, to which Hatori replies, "I'm stuck with him, that's all," which is really funny. Tohru starts to sweat nervously, and he's like, maybe he doesn't like that word. Maybe he doesn't like being called Mabudachi or something. I don't know. Watch your step, Hatori says, and Tohru immediately slips down the stairs. He goes to catch her and, of course, transforms into a tiny seahorse. Or maybe it's a big seahorse by seahorse standards, but in my mind, it's tiny.
I think it's an average seahorse.
Perhaps.
Tiny by other standards.
Though. It's tiny by my standard of cuteness, which makes it cuter. Does that make sense? Tohru looks down and says, "Water, or salt water, which isn't Hatori-san." And she screams and gathers up his clothes and then runs off with him. And Hatori starts to think he starts to perhaps slip into a concussed state. I don't know. I said that in the manga too, but
yeah, he starts to flashback.
He starts to flashback. He has his little X crossed out eyes. His reaction, he thinks that Toru's reaction is the same as hers, and we transitioned into a flashback. And Hatori's narrating this time rather than Momiji. So, no. Kana is introducing herself to Hatori, and this is in the same room that we saw before. So yeah, it does look like, this is what we were kind of alluding to before, it looks like he always practiced medicine from there, from his house, and that she was his assistant there. Whereas what we're talking about is in the manga, if you haven't read it or you haven't seen the original anime, it looks like this scene takes place in a different place. It looks like a clinic or some kind of hospital or something. It looks like a different location. But here it's chosen to be the same location, which I guess maybe is more accurate. I don't know, whatever. So Kana is introducing herself to Hatori. She says it's weird how they've never spoken, even though they're from the same family. And Hatori says that Hatori kind of wants to start working, but Kana is distracted by snow, and she asks him, when the snow melts, what does it become? Water, of course, he replies. Wrong, she says. It becomes spring. Hatori says that Kana was his spring. And then we see this transition to cherry blossoms blooming, and Kana and Hatori are walking amongst them, and Hatori's narration continues. I was snow. I've been frozen somewhere along the line in my dark cage. And she was the bright, fresh spring. We cut to a scene on a beach, which is not in the manga, just in case anybody was curious. And neither is the cherry blossom one, but it's the same, it's kind of the same narration that's overlaid over a different scene. At the beach, Kana plays in the waves while Hatori is still watching her, and he says, I fell in love like it was a logical necessity. She runs up to him, puts her hands on his chest, and moves in to kiss him, but he turns and walks away, leaving her staring after him. And then she found out, he says in his narration. We see Hatori as a seahorse again, Kana kneeling over him this time, saying, salt water or fresh water, which is it, Hatori? And she picks him up and dumps him in the bathtub. Which if you read the anime, the next scene that or you read the manga, the next scene that he says is if you dumped a real seahorse in a bathtub, he probably would have drowned. But they never showed the bathtub, so I thought it was kind of funny that they added that in. It was great. Anyway, like I said, we cut to her toweling off Hatori's hair, and in the memory, Hatori says, just so you know, if you put a real seahorse in the bath, it would probably die. And she's like, my bad. She says she finally understands why Hatori would never hold her. Of course, he wouldn't want people to know. Of course, he would want to keep his distance, especially from someone that he loved. Don't reject me, she says. And Hatori looks up, very surprised, as if he never thought that he would hear that from somebody else. That's my own thing, and I'm interjecting, but he looks super surprised. I want to be with you, she says. He cries. For the first time in his life, he felt saved. Like a river of snow melted by spring, the tears wouldn't stop flowing, he says, in his narration. For 2 months, it felt like a dream. Then we cut to the scene we saw before, which is Akito surrounded by mirrors. Hatori and Kana kneel on the floor. So what's about to happen is that The scene, a lot of these pieces are exactly the same as like Momiji's, except now we get the dialogue that's actually happening in them. So what Momiji was saying was kind of like overlaid on the same animation. Now we're going to hear what actually happened. So
yeah. So before I was like watching it through a window, and now we're in the room with them.
yeah, exactly. It's really cool. Actually, I liked it a lot. So we cut to the scene before. Kido is surrounded by mirrors. Hatori and Kana kneel on the floor. That dream came to an end when we asked Akito to let us marry, Hatori says in his narration. Kana sits up and smiles, but almost immediately, Akito runs up and pulls her up by the hair. Akito shouts, "You think I'll give him to you?" Shigure, who wisely waited outside the door, comes in and tries to calm Akito down. "We don't need you. You can't even break the curse," Akito yells. Hatori steps between Akito and Kana and he pushes them back. Shigure catches Kana, and Hatori tries to calm Akito down. "You're not wanted," Akito screams as he pushes Hatori back into one of the mirrors. And we see Hatori crash, and we see the blood kind of spurt or spread or whatever you want to call it. The scene picks up from before. So this is where we cut in before, and we couldn't hear what was happening, but now we can. Kana runs over to Hatori, and Shigure catches Akito Shigure catches Akito as he yells, "It's your fault if Hatori goes blind." Akito's voice kind of starts to fade out a little bit in the background if you listen very carefully, but we can still hear him yelling. Hatori pulls his hand away from his face, and it's covered in blood, and Kana's face goes dark. "It's all your fault. It's all your fault," Akito yells over and over. Kana raises her hands to her face as we fade to black.
Omae no Seda.
Omae no Seda, Akito says. It's true.
It was worthy of the first anime, and it's Omae no Seda's.
Yes, it was definitely... Akito's voice actor is really nice. It's really great. Not nice. It's very...
Yeah, it's good voice acting.
It's very disconcerting, which makes it great. The scene was
I like
really
the dub
great.
one too. They're both doing a good job with Akito, I think.
That's good. Akito, I think, would be a very difficult
challenging character.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You have to have a certain quality. And I think even the scene that's coming up with Akito saying stuff is also
that's the one
perfect.
That's the one that really made me notice for the dub. The transition from the
screaming
in this one to the next scene.
So Hatori's narration continues. Kana felt ill. No matter what I said or did, she would crumble. Her heart and mind suffered. We cut to Akito talking to Hatori. This is what we were talking about. Snow. We can see kind of the screen doors are closed. Or the paper doors are closed. We can see snow falling outside in the background, which is a really nice effect. I think it's interesting that it's okay, so Hatori's eye is bandaged, so it was the cherry blossoms bloomed and now it's snowing again. Is that the implication?
Maybe the shadows are actually cherry blossoms and they're just meant to look like snow. Maybe.
I accept that. It's entirely possible. He's erasing her memories in the snow, too.
Yeah, so. It could just be symbolic, in Hatori's memories, because they also have that one where it talks about the snow melting on the river, and there's still snow, even though everything else is.
Yeah, I think it is just symbolic. I think I'm overthinking it, but
yeah.
Akito asks, "Isn't this what your memory suppression technique is for?" And then Akito says some other things. I condensed this dialogue, but Akito closes in close to Hatori and says, kind of in his ear. It's not whispering, but he says very close to Hatori, "Isn't it your final duty to save her from suffering? What she really wants deep down is to be free. She wants to forget." We cut to the snowy scene that we saw before in Momiji's description. Kana kneels and Hatori looks down at her. "If only we never met," she says. Hatori wonders if this is punishment for erasing the memories of others. And while he's talking, we see flashes of Yuki and Momiji as children. "I never imagined that I'd have to erase the memories most precious to me with my own hand," he says. Or thinks, I guess. Kana apologizes for not being able to protect him, and they both cry. We see Hatori place his hand over her eyes. And as Hatori erases her memories, the scene becomes a negative image, which is cool. His bandages fly off, and Kana falls back. Hatori thinks that he should be the one to apologize. He was the one who failed to protect Kana. "Thank you, Kana," he thinks. "It's all right now. You don't have to suffer anymore." We see the memory again, the one that's in the photo. And we cut back to the snowy scene. Hatori thinks, "God, please let her meet someone who can really make her happy. I will pay. I'm willing to be frozen in the snow. until I die. Tohru's voice stirs him, and he wakes up from his like flashback / concussion / fainting or whatever. Tohru asks if he's all right, and he says that he's cold. It turns out that Tohru was able to get him to like a bench and laid him down and covered him with his coat, but of course he's naked underneath. Did you see? He asks. No, she says, and then my Junichi, he continues, and she says yes, but she doesn't think there's anything weird about it. And then she realizes that she forgot to grab his shoes in her haste, and so she goes off to get them. While Tohru's gone, 3 women pass by. It's Kana, it seems, and 2 of her friends. It turns out that Kana is engaged now. And she says that they ask what kind of guy she's engaged to, and she says he's the kind of person who makes her heart feel calm when she's around him, although he's not as handsome as Hatori. Hatori thinks she's grinning like she did. And then they tease her about like having an affair with Hatori or whatever. I didn't write down all the dialogue, but they tease her some more. Hatori thinks she's grinning like she did back then, and he smiles as well. Congratulations, he says. And Tohru, who has returned, is like, for what? And he's like, it's nothing. Tohru realizes it's snowing as well, and she bounds over to the edge of... They're on this like a platform thing inside the Sohma house. There's like a little water thing that they're looking at over. It seems there's like a bridge in the distance where like Kana and her 2 friends are walking.
It's a scenic bypass.
It's definitely a scenic bypass. I said pergola thing in my notes. I don't think that's what it is, but you know. Tohru bounds over to the edge of the thing, and she's like, "It's snowing," and Hatori suddenly remembers what Kana asked him the first day that they met, and he asked Tohru, "What do you think becomes of snow when it melts?" "It becomes spring, right?" Tohru says. "No matter how cold it is now, spring will come again. It never fails. It's mysterious, isn't it?" "Yes," he says, and looks up at the sky. At the main gate, Shigure rendezvous with Hatori and Tohru. And he's like, "Oh, you're still here?" Because, you know, he doesn't know that there's been hijinks while he was looking at the New Year's decorations or whatever. And they talk. Hatori leaves them, and then Tohru and Shigure briefly talk about Hatori and how he's kind. And Shigure takes off to the gate to head home. A car appears in the background and drives down the tree-lined road, and the car passes Tohru, and we see inside the car Aikido and another man in the back seat. And it quickly passes. Shigure is already outside of the gate, and he asks what's for dinner. But Tohru, who is still inside the Sohma gate, asks Shigure. She says, "Shigure-san, what is the curse? Should I do something to help?" Shigure says, he doesn't answer right away, but he eventually says, "You can help by being yourself. I don't think I should tell you about it yet. I'm sorry." So they return to the house. There's this really nice, like, snowy kind of transition shots. There's, like, one of a street light and snow falling, and then kind of, like, the forest, and we see Shigure's house up on the top of the hill of the forest. Tohru thinks while this transition is going on, "I feel like I understand more about the Sohmas, but less at the same time," and she wonders if she'll ever meet Aikido. Back inside the house, they find Kyo and Yuki have fallen asleep at the Kratats, which is beautiful and amazing. Shigure tries to kind of like wake them up, and we hear her internal thoughts, and she says, none of that changes this. I want to cherish every day that I spend in this house. And that's the end of the episode. Whew.
One other thing in the episode is that the seahorse got added to the end credits.
Yes! I saw that and I was like, yay!
I don't think it's a permanent addition because it doesn't really fit with the music. And it takes place in one of the other sections, but I thought it was funny.
I thought it was great. I loved it. I was like, oh, he's like swimming around.
Angry seahorse.
Yeah, it was so good.
Scene.
It was a good episode. Like I said, I thought it was really beautiful, this one. Yeah. All of them are great, but especially this had some really interesting, like use of color in the snowy scenes and stuff like that, and then the way Aikido's, at least in the sub and like you said in the dub as well, the way that Aikido is acted is really great.
Yeah, I think the character animation was like extra good in this episode too. Mm-hmm. Like it's always pretty good, but
they put a lot of time into this,
especially in the scene with Aikido.
The way that Aikido like grabs Kana's hair, Kana looks up and smile. You have just enough time to like see her smile, and then Aikido is there, which was really also really like it's just like uncomfortably fast. Like it's like unnaturally fast, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. You know, horrifying but cool.
Yeah.
This episode rides a really fine line between horrifying and cool.
Yeah.
It's like enjoyable in its horribleness, I think.
Yeah.
I did think it was kind of weird that they're in this room with mirrors. I thought
well, it's always it's really vague about what exactly
Yeah.
Akito did to Hattori's eye. So this is like the most definite version of it, I think.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Like in
Yeah. I remember in the first anime people joked about like the vase about like throwing a vase at him, but all we really see is like some shattered stuff on the ground.
yeah,
First
I
anime.
thought it
And
looked like
the
pottery for sure.
yeah. The manga doesn't really have anything. I think it just has
No,
like blood splatter.
I don't think we ever know. I think it's just like Akito hurt Hattori's eye, and you're right. I think it's
Hmm.
just like it's very vague. It's like blood spatter. You see him holding his face, and you see like the
Yeah.
scene where like Kana looks at him and her face goes all dark. Like that scene is
Hmm.
represented in the manga, not exactly in that way, obviously, but like that's
Yeah.
there. But there's no definite kind of like official manga thing about what happened to what Akito
Yeah.
did to Hattori. So
Hmm.
and it's an interesting take on that. It feels very like weird, but
Yeah.
also
I
kind
actually
of
kind of
Aikido
like
to
it
have
for
mirrors.
yeah, I kind of like it for Akito's personality. Like
Yeah,
it's more of an accident, but he's still like immediately blaming someone else for it,
and
you
going
know?
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's someone used the meme of like the guy shooting. I don't know what it is, but
Oh yeah.
it was like
How
Aikido
could
like
Kana do this or
yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hurts Hattori's eye, and it's like how could Kana do this?
Yeah.
How could Kana do this to Hattori or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's true.
But yeah, I kind of like that. Like it being an accident and Akito's still not able to do anything but blame
Also, the way that
immediately blame someone else for it. Yeah.
like I said earlier, kind of like the way that Aikido moves is so creepy. It's like a
Yeah.
zombie. Like you can
Hmm.
tell that Aikido is in this kind of like rage.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I don't know, like it's like almost inhuman. It's very interesting.
Hmm.
It's like there's a lot of visual stuff to see in these episodes. I think I was
Yeah.
really excited that I had to watch it a couple of times because
Yeah,
I
I kept
didn't write notes.
rewinding the flashback scenes just to get a handle on the movement of it.
Yeah, and it is fast. It's also this episode is
Hmm.
really really fast. There's like a lot that happened because they crammed two chapters together, and
Hmm.
like you kind of could extend it, but you kind of could not. Like I don't know. It's
Yeah.
they're good together, but
Hmm.
yeah, but like that part, and it's also they did the same thing where they showed the same thing twice,
Hmm.
which is like also probably like reusing stuff for budget. But I think in this case it was used well, where they have Momiji. It's like Momiji's version of the story, like what he knows,
Yeah.
and then what actually happened, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I think it was good for like not repeating stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
repeating stuff without it seeming repetitive, because essentially those two chapters they come from, it's like, oh, here's the stuff about Hattori and Kana, and here's the stuff about Hattori and Kana,
Yeah, exactly.
and so I think it was a nice way to be like, you kind of get like the someone else telling you the story and then more detail on it. I think it was framed well for that.
It's like long enough that you see it the first time and then you've already seen it, so the second time when you hear it it's like oh, like it's just adding a layer on top of that almost,
Hmm.
which is kind of nice. Like I think it actually helps you process what happened
Yeah.
because it's so short. It's like yeah, like Akito throws Hatori and Shigure's there. Shigure, you can tell that he was waiting outside. Yeah, it's cool. I don't know, I thought it was a good, really really nice episode.
Hmm.
You know, a little uncanny but nice. Of course.
Yeah. And I liked the like we talked about it a little bit, but the better view of the Soma estate.
Yeah, I
I liked
forgot.
that as an addition to this.
I got all tied up talking about all the tragedy that I forgot to
Hmm.
mention that again. But yeah, it was really cool. I enjoyed that a lot. As soon as they opened the doors and we saw the road, because like in the first one, it's like a path of trees, and like in the manga, it's even more abstracted. It's Momiji's map, like you said.
Yeah.
He draws. It's like a little drawing. If you haven't read the manga, it's a little tiny drawing that's just like here's a tree, here's a road, and then there's a cat, and it's cute, but it's not. It's
Hmm.
not detailed. In this, it was like very detailed. Like you get a really good feeling for what it's like
Yeah.
inside the estate, which was cool.
Yeah, like I feel like I have a, as someone who's
Mm-hmm.
read the series a couple of times and watched the first anime, this is the first time I feel like I have a really good grasp of what the
Mm-hmm.
Soma estate might actually look like.
Yeah, I think we talked about it for a long time. I was like, is there another
Hmm.
gate? Is there this?
Yeah.
Like I remember we had some questions about that we talked about
Hmm.
when we talked about this in the manga episode.
Yeah.
And I liked how like Luigi's like, oh, there's like 150 people in the Sohma family in the manga.
Hmm.
And in this case, you get this long shot where you see like houses and houses and houses and houses. And it's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that probably is like enough houses for 150 people or
Yeah.
whatever. Like
It
it's
makes,
cool.
because when you say 150 people, it doesn't actually sound that big, but when you
No,
see the houses for 150 people,
yeah, the space
yeah.
for 150 people
Yeah.
like changes things. I think
Hmm.
that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I thought was interesting, and I don't know if this is just a change in translation, is that when Hattori's describing like the badness of the curse, he says we are monstrous and loathsome.
Mm-hmm.
In the manga, I think he described like the curse or
he says like
their
it's
situation. Yeah,
dark.
he says like it's dark and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, he's describing like the cursed Zodiac members themselves as being monstrous. Was kind of an interesting take on it. Yeah,
I noticed.
I could definitely buy that Hatori would.
He would say it that way, probably.
Put it that way, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That's a fair assumption.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was interesting how I do feel like, so we watched a couple of episodes where we were like, oh, like the dialogue is exactly the same, like the order is the same, even like scene by scene, you know, they're saying exactly the same words. Like when we where like you said omae no seida, that's what Kido says in Japanese. It's like you remember it very clearly if you've watched the original dub, and it's kind of like the same. I feel like in a lot of cases in this episode, things were a little bit mixed up, like the dialogue was a little bit different. Some of the things that they said had kind of a different, it seemed like the way that either it was translated and subtitled or the way it's written, I'm not really sure, had a little bit of a different feeling. I feel like that's happened a couple of times. There's sometimes like specific words that are used. And yeah, I don't know if it's the translation or the actual like original script, but it feels a little bit different, which is nice. Sometimes things are like clearer. Like I thought when the way like we talked about a couple times, but the estate, the way the estate is, it's a lot clearer than in the anime. I mean, in the original manga. Sometimes the dialogue also makes things a little bit clearer. I can't think of a really good example, but sometimes it kind of makes things make a little more sense. Maybe it's the way it's translated or whatever. I don't know. Yeah.
I was waiting for that omae no seida though.
Yeah, we were prepared. I'm sure some people weren't. They were like, "What anime am I watching?" This is suddenly
I was like, "Is he gonna say the thing?" Oh, he said the thing.
He said it. The way that he's standing and he like turns, it's like, yeah, it's it was intense and I liked it.
Yeah.
I might have told you this earlier when we were talking, but when I watched it, I was watching it on my phone and I didn't like cry, but I gripped my phone really hard. I was like, oh, stuff is happening. Like it was tense, right?
Yeah, definitely an intense episode.
Yeah, but I liked it.
But it's sweet at the end.
It is sweet at the end, and she goes home and she's like, I don't care, I want to cherish this anyway, like in her Tohru way. And then they're asleep. Yuki and Kyo are like asleep at the kotatsu, and they're like drooling. Like Kyo like pulled up the thing and he's laying on it. It was so great.
Yeah, there's like oranges on the table.
Yeah, there's like orange peel sitting on the table and stuff.
Yeah. Just sitting there under the kotatsu, eating oranges and sniping at each other until Tohru comes home.
Yes,
I think that's what they do all the time when Tohru's out of the house.
Probably.
Like, and they don't know what to do when Tohru's not here.
And like worrying about where she is.
Yeah.
They're like, how dare she go out with her friends? Now I have to be concerned for an hour or whatever. Yeah. It was a good one. Oh, should I do my public service announcement? Don't not tell people where you're going.
Yeah. Don't meet strange men who threaten you over the phone.
Inside a gated house.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the manga, she's like, "Oh, I'm happy Momiji. I'm more comfortable knowing Momiji will be there."
Especially since they didn't even agree to have Momiji there this time. He just showed up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, Momiji
probably overheard the phone conversation. Was like, "Really, Hatori?"
He's like, "Hatori, you can't just invite a girl over. She's gonna be scared." And he was probably like,
"I'm gonna have to meet her at the gate so she doesn't freak out."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was good times. I don't think I have anything else to say. I feel like I've exalted the animation enough perhaps in this one. I have one other thing to say. The music was really nice. I liked I can't really put my finger on something exactly to talk about, but there were a lot of scenes where they had this like kind of classical sounding music behind like stuff that Akito was saying, and I just thought it enhanced a lot of the things. I didn't find anything was like really stuck out as being weird or whatever, like the bass music from Shikare's house. Yeah, the weird club music,
the whole club music from the other room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was really like subtle, and I noticed like when Akito started yelling, it kind of like picked up and stuff. It was nice. I liked it. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, I got a couple spoilery things, but I think that's all I got for non-spoiler.
Me too. All right, in that case, we'll play the music. Thank you all for listening again. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and hope you're enjoying the anime like we are. I don't know. I feel like I can't think of a critique.
Crying.
Yeah, hope you enjoyed crying. Get used to it. I mean, what? Oh, yeah, it's good. It's going to be good. All right, we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. we're back to talk about spoilers.
Guys, we saw Kureno.
Yes, I know. I think. Yeah, I know. Oh my god. Listen. Someone also commented that they thought that Mayuko was walking around with Kana, which I kind of looked at it. Yeah, it's definitely her. Wait, she says that in the dialogue?
Yeah, she says.
Oh. Something Mayu something or something?
Said like thanks Mayuko or something.
Oh, weird. I didn't. Yeah. I definitely kind of was writing really fast when I.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was the sub or the dub or both, but I definitely heard Mayuko.
Other people pointed out, so it must be true too. So I mean, yeah, for sure. Kureno is there. I thought it was really. Oh, we didn't talk about this. We should probably talk about it and edit something in because we didn't talk about that scene at all. I don't know if there's something to say, but
you mentioned it.
Oh, I mean, like we didn't talk. Well, I don't know if there's something to discuss, but
I don't think we did.
Yeah, it's but yeah, it's different than It's way different than like the manga where he's driving around in the car like that, or Kito's driving around in the car with Kureno, and that was cool.
Yeah.
The one thing I thought was interesting was like the way they drive past, and like I thought it was kind of interesting how Shigure is on the outside of the house and Toru's still on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I have something clear to say about that, but I did think it was conspicuous and interesting that she hadn't yet left.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's when she asks him if there's something she should do.
Mm.
I guess maybe she's just still like dwelling there. Like she's hesitant about leaving there. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't know why you would deliberately position her there. And yeah, I thought it was interesting how Akito drives by in the car. I was like, oh my god, when the car's coming down the street. Because you can see it from really far away, too. Like, and yeah, and Kureno was there.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit, and rewound it.
Rewound it. I looked at it like 3 times. I was like, oh,
it's gotta be him.
Yeah, kind of dark red hair.
Yeah.
It's hard to see that it's even Akito.
Yeah,
I'm surprised that they made that choice. I should have made the window a little clearer or something.
I think it's fairly clear just for how they framed it, because they like kind of slowed it down, kind of narrowed the focus a bit. I think it's especially after you saw a lot of Akito this episode, so you don't you know what he looks like at this point.
For sure.
But
I know, it's so exciting.
That was another like reassurance for manga fans.
Yeah,
we're gonna get there. We got him. See, he's here.
He's here. Look, he's here. He's really here.
Got him.
Shigure is glaring into the car.
Yeah.
He's like, fuck you. He drives by and he's like, what? And then like, where were they going? Where were they driving to? Because they didn't drive out. Because like they didn't drive past Shigure, did they? I don't know. I forget exactly what happened.
Maybe
somewhere
check
else
on the New Year's stuff or something.
Yeah, they got Akito has to go and be like, this is terrible. It's all your fault or whatever. Sass them. Yeah, micromanage it, probably. I
was just thinking about how annoying Shigure must be checking on the...
He's like, oh, what's going on? What are you guys doing? They're like, fuck off or help. Like, he's like, gotta go, be an author, live in the woods, take care of my adopted children. Bye. Yeah, for sure. He's definitely annoying. There's like that little scene in the manga where they're trying to study and he's like, it's just like Shigure being annoying or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was imagining, is him just doing that with all the people working hard to prepare for the figures.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely what's happening. Yeah, it was cool. I was excited and it was really cool.
Yeah. And I thought the mention of Momiji having to rehearse for his dance was cute.
Yeah.
One other thing I noticed this time is when Momiji's like asking if Toru's also happy that she met him.
Mm-hmm.
How like in the original manga it's fairly like he says it fairly normally, just kind of curious. He's curious, but this time he seems kind of like sad.
He's very upset about it.
Yeah, and having just read the relevant Momiji chapters in preparation of our next episode, I was thinking about the whole thing where he talks about like thinking there's not a memory that's okay to forget and all that stuff, and I feel like he was kind of like thinking on that thing.
I think so. And also I think, I mean, like his mother abandoned him, so he's like, what about me? Are you glad you met me too? So I think it's just kind of, I interpret it as like hitting on that.
But I just meant that kind of in general, like his whole thing where he's like, I don't think it's okay to forget a memory, and he was thinking of that, like how his mother felt differently with regards to him. So
for sure, it's definitely, and like you can tell by how sad he is. I think you're right. I think in the manga it's just kind of like, oh, what about me too, and then, or that's how it feels, at least by the way that's drawn. And then in this case it was like sounds like he's about to cry, at least in the
Yeah.
sub that I watched. And of course, Tori was like, of course, like she reassures him,
Yeah.
which is nice. It was very sweet. And then of course, like, yeah, there's a flashback with Momiji. Momiji's included in Hatori's flash of like, oh, is this my punishment for erasing other people's memories? So we got
even
that.
more prominently than in the manga, I think.
Yeah, I think
we
so.
got like, because he was just kind of like peeking around the corner in like a little corner panel.
Yeah.
In the manga.
I think it's like full flash of Yuki, like full flash of Momiji. So it's pretty prominent.
He looks so sad.
Yeah. He does look
Yuki
sad.
looked really sad too in that little flash of him. He's like full on crying.
Yeah.
I can't remember how he looked in the manga, but
everybody's sad. Listen.
Yeah. Everybody cries.
Everybody cries.
Hatori makes everybody cry.
Yeah. Hatori probably, like, after they left, he was just like,
not again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Momiji was the one who made her cry, technically. And maybe Hatori is outside the door like, shit. It was all me. I scared her or whatever. Like, I don't know. I feel like deep down Hatori is the softest. He's purposely trying to, like, be very stern, I think. Get out.
Oh, no.
Yeah. That's what Akito said, apparently. Although Akito didn't say that this time. Akito was just like, it's all your fault, and slam people into mirrors.
As you do.
What is up with the mirrors? Is there anything to say about that? It's like not in the manga. But of course, like you said, we don't, I think you brought it up, but we don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I'm like, is it a weird, like, room? Maybe it's supposed to be like a weird room thing, like the painted room. Like, why would you have all those mirrors? It looks kind of crazy. Like, I don't know. I'm just saying. It looks like it adds to the air of instability that Akito has. You can say that in a more politically correct way, I think. Or a more correct way, probably.
I mean, I think Akito does have issues regarding self-image, but that comes up later, so.
Maybe they'll use that room again for that reveal.
It could be. Yeah.
Maybe that's setting it up. Because she's
Because it is a mirror in the manga, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember exactly how it's set up in the manga, but she's looking in a mirror, so.
Yeah, she like comes out of the bath and like looks in the mirror.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Maybe they'll use it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're setting up a motif.
Maybe. A mirror motif. Identity is a thing that happens, so. Yeah. Identity is a thing that happens.
Identity is definitely a thing that happens. Very astute.
I run a podcast.
I went to college.
I did. I went to a college for colors, like we talked about last time. All right. Anyway, I don't have any other spoilers. There was a lot of sadness.
Yeah. A lot of sadness with a side of spoilers.
Yeah, basically. All right. Next time we will talk about episode 8.
Makes sense.
Yeah. It's the logical next step. Oh, I guess one thing, it's not really a spoiler, but did you see I think somebody was asking on Tumblr about how many episodes there are? And I saw that on Twitter they announced the like release date for the Blu-ray or something already for the first season. And it's June. So I think there's only going to be like 12 episodes. That's my personal opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know when it'll start up again because anime seasons are weird.
Yeah, who knows? It could be like 2 weeks and then it's like season 2. I feel like, well, yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But anyway, so episode 8 is coming up. We may or may not be 2/3 of the way through the first season. It's difficult to tell.
You're definitely 7 episodes in, though.
Yeah, that is for sure. All right, we will see you all next time. Thank you all for listening. Bye. Bye.